Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast, where we chat to founders, creators, and self starters about how they started and where they are now. Today's episode is slightly different, where we turn the tables and I'm actually the one being interviewed. It's on my friend Jason Luboyera's podcast, and he was actually my very first guest on my podcast. It's a conversation where we discuss personal branding and the different objectives that a client may have when they want to build their personal brand, the importance of building a personal brand, and some of the things I've learned on my journey on building other people's personal brands and my own. I think it's quite an interesting episode. I'd be interested to hear if you find it interesting too. Please do let me know and enjoy the show.
Byron Greeley, creative, industrious, traveler. Mate, I could go on and on. How are you doing today, man?
I'm fantastic, Jason. Thanks for having me. We had a great chat last time we spoke on my podcast. I'm so happy to be here to have a chat with you today.
That's so true, man. I actually enjoyed being on your podcast the last time. I think I was the first guest, which is super exciting. And
You were?
I was, right?
Yeah, guest number one.
What?
So thank you for that, getting the ball rolling.
And you guest number two on my podcast. And I'm super excited to get into this. But before we jump into understanding personal branding from your point of view, like I was mentioning, you're such a dynamic guy. We actually went to a similar high school. Give me a bit of context on who Byron really is and what he does.
Right. So I've sort of been on a journey of discovery, sort of figuring things out, rather ticking things off that I definitely don't want to do, rather than finding the exact thing that I want to do. And that process has led me to a few places. I started working at a startup. I was like the operations manager there, the only full-time employee, and that was to deliver Wi-Fi access to people in poorer communities and townships in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
It was piggybacking off the government Wi-Fi infrastructure, and I ended up not seeing a future in that and decided that it was time for a change. But the next option was sort of the corporate ladder route. And that was like what was seen as impressive in my circles, and it just didn't feel right to me. So I wanted to remove myself from that circle. And so I did a TEFL course and said I'll teach English somewhere in the world, wherever will take me. And I ended up in Hong Kong. I then started teaching English in Hong Kong, gave myself like a year and a half, but I then met my girlfriend there, and I ended up staying for another 3 years on top of that. So I was in Hong Kong for 4.5 years. While I was there, I taught myself videography and photography, and this sort of led to like a snowball effect of my understanding of learning and how to learn things, and that you can learn anything on the internet. And that's sort of what drove me. So I then started picking things that I was interested in, going headfirst into them, and then making an educated decision whether I wanted to do it or not. And throughout that process, I started learning about NFTs, trading them, and then that led me to helping these projects on the marketing side. Because I ran a blog personally, I started writing for them. I then got into the writing side of helping these projects and then building a personal brand, and like one thing led to another, and I became hooked on personal branding. And now I work at a personal branding consultancy where I'm the content manager and I head up most of the copywriting.
Phew, amazing, man. Like, what I love is that you express that you're in this mode of discovery, which is quite bold to pronounce, because basically, in what I understand is you don't really know who you are, but there's points and places where each time you're like, ooh, I like this. This is not for me. This is for me. Man, I love that. That really hits the heart. But that segues quite well into the conversation that we're going to have today, which is personal branding. You work at Sonda, if I'm not correct, and
Yes,
you
correct.
build out personal brands for some of the most industrious, well-known individuals in the world. So, like Fortune 500 type companies. And immediately, I want to jump straight into it. Why do these individuals want to build personal brands? Like, why do they come to you? What is like the one or two main reasons they're like, Byron, you and team, please help me build my personal brand? Why do they do it?
Well, I think everyone misunderstands the value in personal branding, and they think that personal branding leads to vanity metrics and followers, which leads to fame, and then things come off the back of that. But actually, through personal branding, you can achieve many different things, and so each client is very different, and they have a unique set of goals. And so some will come to us wanting to simply improve their brand equity and seem like a thought leader. Others will want to get speaking engagements in their particular field. Some are looking for non-executive board seats. Others looking for investment, and some wanting to just acquire new customers. It varies case to case on a case to case basis, but yeah, through personal branding, you can achieve each one of these things, or multiple.
Wow. Okay, I'm very much a sales guy, and most people always say, LinkedIn personal branding is all about sales and like getting your next sale. It's so good to hear that there's other ways you can use your personal brand to gain traction, speaking gigs. Wow, that's super good to hear. And yourself, like I've been following your story since you traveled, and like we went to high school together. You're a really cool guy, and then you took this interesting route. And I love the way you documented what you were doing. You've got that website. You're really good in terms of doing video. What was your reason for building a personal brand at that time, or maybe you didn't even know? If you don't, that's fine. But now, what is your reason as an employee building a personal brand? So those are two different questions, but I'd love to know.
The reason I started was because of I was into the Web3 space, and I actually considered when we moved to London, I was helping Web3 brands already in Hong Kong, and I wanted to transfer those skills over into UK, but I didn't have as many connections. And Web3 LinkedIn, as strange as it may sound, was actually picking up. There was quite a lot of engagement. And so I started in that area just by sharing my thoughts. And so I had two goals when I first started, because I've always enjoyed writing, but I've never felt that I was amazing at it. And so I decided to just put in the reps. And I set myself a goal of posting every single weekday. And I just sharing my thoughts because I had all this knowledge. And that actually led to some tangible results and people reaching out to me consulting on some projects and things like that. And then as it's progressed, I've shifted into my newsletter and the podcast, Another Excuse, where it's more focused on business style personal development, where you're just looking to grow and commit to things. And so that has where my focus has shifted, and now that's the content I produce. But it's still 5 times a week I post on LinkedIn. I share my podcast on like TikTok and Instagram Reels, one a day for weekdays, and things like that. And it's just about, it was more focused on committing to something and growth and just improving. And I know by putting in the reps, I will improve. And that's been my focus rather than any vanity metrics, because I feel like the vanity metrics may come if you want them once you put in the reps and you're actually good enough to attract people who are interested. And then from an employee standpoint, they sort of overlap, and I'm able to speak about my copywriting, which could also generate leads because people may be interested in developing their personal brand.
Hmm. So you decided to build your personal brand as a way to sort of build discipline or improve a skill. Wow, I've actually never heard that. Like it's almost the saying like I want to get a bit bigger or I want to get faster um physically. Wow, okay, interesting. And then
Yeah,
now you've
yeah,
translated it into like a
I've,
professional goal. Okay, man, hey, big ups. Like
yeah. They ran in tandem,
yeah,
but just like you said, applying it to the gym and those type of things, it's incremental progress,
yes.
but we expect immediate results in so many other aspects of our lives, and that doesn't really make sense. Why do we want to make that quick buck or be proficient at a skill overnight? Like that's not realistic. And so me committing to these things is also part of my like self identity. If I'm willing to show up for myself,
Wait,
then other people's will expect me to show up for them too.
powerful. I'm gonna quote you on that. And you use a lot of keywords. I think are you quite a result data driven individual?
um, in particular aspects of my life, but like I said, when it comes to this personal branding and my own personal brand, uh, I focus more on me getting better rather than the follow count or engagement and things like that. I think it's helpful to pay attention to engagement and things like that on a post by post basis so you can understand how to improve. So you're looking at it from a way to improve rather than like, oh yeah, I'm doing well because people like me. That's not really productive. It's more like this post did well or did shit. Why? And then you try replicate it if it did well, or discard it, but understand why you're discarding that process.
Okay, cool. So that's I'm gonna always try to bring it back to something that relates to me, which is physical activity, sports, and if you're basically talking about like performance metrics, right? So let's bring it back to like the clients you work with, like these CEOs, these individuals looking to get new speaking gigs. What are some of the KPIs for improvement of you doing a good job for them look like? Like, I'd love to know.
Yeah, so it is a bit more unclear in the sense that we're not looking for those vanity metrics, because if you get like 1,000
Mhm.
likes, but only two people in those 1,000 are actually willing to pay money for your service, then it's like you're not really doing your job. But it's very difficult with a lot of analytics tools at the moment to determine who are the people that you want to sell to out of those 1,000 who liked your post. It's quite a gray area, or like were five interested, but only two converted to a sale, and you can't really see who those five that were interested were.
Yeah.
And so we can only really measure on results, but our results are measuring things like those speaking engagements or getting people a board seat. But a board seat, it's an end goal, and the progress towards that goal are like multiple interviews
Mhm.
and things like that. Because once you achieve it, then you've achieved your goal.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get multiple board seats. And so it's looking at things like that, where it's like, what do they want to achieve, and how do we break down getting to what they want to achieve in a slightly different way than just looking at engagement and those type of vanity metric results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense because like top level vanity metrics, like you said, impressions, likes, shares, um, follower growth, amount of people who viewed your profile. But you know, if you do, like I know you're deep in this space, are there any hidden KPIs that at face value, if I had to come on as a client of you with you, I would be like, why are you recording this? Like, it doesn't make sense for me. Right. Well, like I don't see why you're paying attention here when I want more likes. Or why are you paying attention here when I want more impressions? Like, have you seen any type of like And you talk about this gray area where like there's signs of intent versus signs of vanity. Is there some type of like X factor there that has surprised you and you're like, oh wow, guys and girls who are in this space aren't looking at this and they're missing out on something that is pivotal.
Um, well, I think it differs from a case to case basis because if you if you're handling an account for someone that appeals to people who want to sort of leverage their following by just commenting and things like that, then there's not a direct correlation. Do you know what I mean? Those comments aren't as valuable because you can see people are sort of milking another person's following. Like
Yeah.
those huge creators like
Yes.
Dan Coe and all that on LinkedIn, you know, people are commenting on their comments just to get views and hopefully convert some people over to their profile.
Mhm.
Whereas for a smaller client account, comments can be extremely valuable because it's creating a discussion around the topic and it's triggered a discussion that's actually meaningful and people are interested because what we found when a client starts their personal brand at the beginning stages, it's it's harder to get that initial engagement, but the comments and stuff are way more meaningful, if that makes sense. And then once you reach a certain velocity, then the metrics shift. So
Oh,
there's no definitive answer. But on the smaller accounts, I think comments go a lot further. And then as soon as you flip to like a big account that people want to leverage, then comments lose value.
that
But I really like comments from that sense. Yeah.
that is so true. Like yeah, as a small account, I think I would want more likes, shares. But when I'm hearing what you're saying, the value in a discussion from somebody who's maybe in your ideal profile or not even, but let's say they, you know, debunked your value in your post, but then you went into a discussion for three different comments, there's actually more value in that than 50 likes. Whereas vice
Yeah.
versa.
And with smaller accounts, because as you know, like 5% of people on LinkedIn are actually creating content or engaging. Most people just scroll and look at posts. So if you're on a smaller account, you're going to have more of those people who aren't willing to engage because they're not looking to build their personal brands. They're not incentivized as much to comment. So if you incentivize a comment out of those people, you have the opportunity to expand your network a lot quicker because that is basically sharing that post to their network. So you're basically pulling these people out of the shadows by creating discussion.
Brilliant. And talking about pulling people out of the shadow. So 5% of people on LinkedIn are sharing content. Why? Why only 5%?
Um, LinkedIn's, I don't know, it's an interesting world. I think because we're involved in the personal branding side, and like the people we follow and the people we communicate with, it seems like a lot of people are posting all the time and like it's a very common thing to do. But if I think back to like around the time I moved to Hong Kong and the value of LinkedIn and what it was used for in my eyes was it was basically just a CV. You just updated it when you moved jobs, and you posted once every time you changed jobs and you updated your network. That was it. And I think most people use LinkedIn in that way. Like I have some older connections who have sent me a few DMs on LinkedIn because of the stuff I posted, but they take forever to respond on LinkedIn because it's just not an app that they open or use frequently, and they'll maybe only use the web app. And they only go on when they're like, oh, maybe I should check my LinkedIn. I haven't been on there for 3 weeks. And that's actually a very common use of LinkedIn.
Really?
And so that also goes to say, if you are producing content, you got to think that the majority of those people actually are like that. And so we tend to think that repetition of content is like a no-go, and we freak out and we're like, oh shit, I said that like a few weeks ago. But the odds of new people seeing that content are actually really high. And if you want to drive engagement from a particular audience, you've got to be slightly repetitive, or else you're all over the place.
Oh, nuggets, my friend. Okay. Let me just digest that. That's brilliant, man. I've been also in this space for some time, but just even listening to what you said in terms of repetition is important, but then the value of your repetition doesn't always reach your audience just because they don't spend as much time on the platform. That is so. I'm even just thinking like a post that I just recently put out a post and it like went semi viral. There is actually no sin in me spinning that same story in like 2 weeks. Interest,
100%.
interest.
100%. And also, there's no harm in going back like 6 months and looking at your most successful posts and slightly tweaking it, maybe changing the picture. But that message resonated with people, and sure, some people might see it again, but the majority of people haven't. And because that message resonated, it probably will again.
Brilliant, brilliant. So like this is, I would say that's a key thing to do. This is like honestly, put in the reps and don't be shy to repeat the same working message with a different, maybe format and style. But what are the biggest mistakes you're seeing when people are building their personal brands? Like from your point of view, having you've used the platform when you were in Hong Kong and you discovered what it is and its value now. Like over that journey, what are some of the biggest mistakes you're seeing when people are trying to build their personal brand?
Well, I'll talk from like my personal
Mhm.
experience, and the initial first mistake is not building a personal brand in the first place. Um, I know it may be nerve-wracking for some people, but it's like a double-edged sword. So first of all, people don't really give a shit. So put yourself out there. You have nothing to lose. And then secondly, the value that can bring is it makes you a more well-rounded person. If you're sharing your fringe interests on a place like LinkedIn, then future job opportunities are definitely going to turn to your LinkedIn. Like that's guaranteed. So why not make it a more interesting place that tells them more about you and who you are as a person? Just that alone, I see like huge benefit. And then it could also lead to opportunities that you may have never even considered by simply sharing those fringe interests. And maybe you don't enjoy your job and someone sees that you are really well versed in a random field that no one expected, and they reach out to you, and that leads to something else. So like you're not going to get opportunities, aren't going to fall in your lap if you don't put yourself out there. So that's the first one. And then the second mistake that I've made from a growth perspective, and also being a bit strapped for time, is like I've relied on posting every day and felt like I was making enough progress there. But I was kind of lying to myself, because growing on LinkedIn, if that is something that you want to do, you need to play both sides, and it's creating content, but it's also adding value on other people's posts and engaging and creating community. And yes, like I've said, on the huge accounts, there's people commenting, and things like that to try grow their accounts, and it works. But I think what's even more beneficial, but it takes a lot of work, is commenting on other people's comments and sharing insights and creating discussion on a topic that a big creator has created. And I don't do that enough, but I know that leads to results for the few times that I've actually like sat down and properly committed to it and like tried to add value to people's comments and shown interest. Like that automatically leads to connections. And so that's a really useful task to do if you want to grow. But it does take some time. And so you got to set aside time to actually be intentional about it.
Brian, I must say thank you actually just for being more open. I love how you said, I'm going to talk about my mistakes from a personal point of view, like from personal experience, because it's very easy to point. Like I was actually even expecting you to be like, oh wow, I see this person doing that. Oh, one of our accounts do this. And that's that. I appreciate that. That's I you deserve your flowers. That's honestly good to hear, and I learned so much from just hearing your experience. Um,
Thank you.
you're a tech guy. You love tech, and I read your newsletter, the Another Excuse newsletter, and the fact that you've got an oversight on so much tech, right? Generative AI, immersive tech, ad tech, virtual reality, with personal brands being humans, right? They're meant to be human, right? They're meant to be you, but tech enabling us to be more of ourselves. Like that's I look at tech like that. Tech should not be not you, right? It should enhance who you really are. I want to ask you this, like, what do you think the future of personal branding looks like alongside some of the tech that you're most excited about? And maybe you can let me know some of that tech, but then also what does personal branding look like?
Yeah, I agree with you. Personal branding is all about the human connection and, portraying yourself in the way you want to portray yourself. So I don't see AI and these type of tools completely taking over and replacing people wanting to build their personal brands, because people won't connect with it as much as a genuine human being. But like you also said, these tools are tools to be used to enhance the way you deliver yourself and your information. And it also lowers the barrier to entry. That's not to say that like you don't need to put in any work. It still takes work, but a lot of these tools make it a lot easier. I mean, even a simple tool like ChatGPT, where you can use it for idea generation, for content ideas. Like, you have no excuse if you want to do it. You have no excuse of running out of ideas ever again. There's like in my newsletter, Beehive, I use Beehive, the platform, and it's constantly creating new ways to grow your newsletter and get noticed by subscribers that you want to get noticed by. And so there's AI is sort of seen as this like one thing where it could replace us all, but AI is going to be in almost every product that we going to use going forward. It's just going to improve the quality of those products. And I don't think we should run away from it. I think we should use it in every aspect that we could use assistance in. That's not to say that we rely on it simply because it's there. It's like things like, what am I struggling with at the moment? What don't I have time for? Okay, it's generating ideas. That'll save me 2 hours because I just put a really well thought out prompt into ChatGPT. I've got ideas now for the rest of 2 weeks. And then writing those, you can still use ChatGPT, or there's more tailored platforms like Copy AI and so many others where you can convert those ideas into written posts. Although I don't think AI is writing posts amazingly yet. I think it still has a lot of work, a lot of growth, but that's not to say if you're really struggling for time, you now have a framework that then you can put your own experiences into and make it your own. But it's saving you a lot of time, and it's sort of like ticking off all the excuses that you previously made if you wanted to start, and it's enabling you to actually get started. So that's what I see the use of these tools having, like the impact of them having. And you touched on VR and those type of things, which is like completely different, and that's more of a way to connect with your audience and community in a more meaningful way. And with meaningful connection comes less necessity for scale. So you don't need 1 million followers, because the calculations these days are, if someone runs an ad on a like so with Cristiano Ronaldo's account or something, they're expecting to convert like 0.2% of ads into like people who purchase their product, things like that. It's like you can calculate it that way, but it's like fractions of a percent. Whereas if you connect with your community and create these like loyal fans and people who want to engage, you can make a living off 100, 200 people if you're providing value. And so I can see a world where we divert from these huge vanity metrics, and it's like, are you delivering to this tight-knit community and they want to pay you $100 a year, and like, is that worth it to them? And that's the focus. It's like going to be more value focused and connection rather than just like mass posting on social media platforms.
You shared so brilliantly, like a little quote or saying that we used to say at school, and you were one of those guys, like, was very cool. And it's almost like when Byron brings the vibe, everybody will thrive, right? His tribe will thrive, right? And that's like so true. Like, if you, through immersive tech, virtual reality, bring the vibe, like, or at least offer access to the vibe, your tribe will identify and thrive. So, such a good way that you've expressed that. And it's like you don't seem at all scared, because you say that AI is going to be in everything. So you're not running away from the tech like a few other people would, or because I don't think you can run away from what's already here. Um, and myself, I can also say I'm actually really excited for the what tech's going to enable us to do while we are just living our normal life. So what I mean by that, like, I see the best content is the behind the scenes, the in betweens, the at the dinner table, right? And AI will be able to listen, learn while we are just living our normal lives. And then as creators, it's now our ability to access that information and then curate it into stories for our tribe. I think that's really cool, because most content is always, I would say, latent. Like, it happened, you're gonna watch it later. Until, of course, yeah, live streaming has come out and everything. But it's still, I would say, latented type of content. But now immersive type the content is really where I think is where personal brands should be looking, because AI and like putting AI into a putting this, maybe this recording into a tool, is it's lagging data or content, right? I'm quite excited
Yeah.
for that. I'm very, very excited for that.
And like the two products that have recently been released, the new Meta glasses with Ray-Ban, where you can live stream as like a POV view. It completely changes the way people are going to create and film content. And you can switch from your phone to your glasses, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So that's another way. And then there's another product that I just saw. I've forgotten the name of it, but it's a necklace that you wear that's a microphone, and it records literally everything. And then you can, on the app, you can search. It like organizes your days, and also based on the content and discussions. And so you can search what you discussed, or like, I mentioned this, or maybe you made a joking bet with your friend. You can like text search what you said. It's all transcribed, and you can go back and see word for word what everyone said in that discussion. So I think that's also really interesting.
Wow, 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 wow. We could go on and on about tech, but sticking back to personal brands and tech, where, in your opinion, do you think personal brand is not gone? So, like, what is, like, where everyone's like, "Wow, the Armageddon, the doomsday of what personal branding is." What do you think that is not? Like, it's like, debunk that in your own opinion. Like, "Nah, that's not gonna happen."
It's a tricky one, but I think people are gravitating towards more genuine content. So, you know, back in the day, there were YouTubers who used to have those like prank channels and things like that, where you did outlandish things to gain eyeballs. And yes, that still happens, but I'm not sure if you noticed, but that type of content is not happening nearly as much as it used to. It's because people can now sort of see through the bullshit and that things are staged. And so I think there's going to be less and less staged type content. Like, we know it performs. And so people see through that, and now it doesn't anymore. Like on LinkedIn, it used to be these posts sometimes do well, but not nearly as much as they used to like 6 months ago, where it was like a GIF of a spreadsheet scrolling quickly so you couldn't read any info, and they're like, leave the word yes in the comments and I'll send you a link to this investor doc
Oh
with
yeah, yeah.
100 VCs and their contact details. And like, that was a very easy way to farm engagement and like get new followers. But a lot of the time, those guys wouldn't even send the document that they promised. And so I think people start to learn that these guys are sort of trying to game the system. And although the system may still be gameable and we may move to different platforms, I think people's bullshit radar is improving. And so it's going to be harder to blow up just through bullshit, and you're going to have to be genuine. Sorry, that was quite a long-winded answer.
No, no. Well, at this stage of the game, I'm really loving this conversation, and more is more. But Byron, really, I've absolutely loved this. Uh, I have genuine love for you, man, and what you do. I always lean on you for support, ideas, and bouncing off my, if you want to call it bullshit, because you've got a good bullshit radar. I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the Professional Pillow Talk podcast. I've enjoyed this, and I hope our audience has enjoyed it too. Anybody listening, Byron is very, very accessible. I will leave all his contact details in the comments. But for now, Byron, much love, brother.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. It was great to reflect on personal branding and all of that. So thanks again. And chat soon.
That's it. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.